On paper, AI and intellectual property, I mean, you being a lawyer and going to intellectual property events, I'd say this one has a little bit more panache and style than some of the other ones you've been to.
A lot more upmarket than the ones I'm used to going to.
It's, I think it's exciting to be able to have conversations like this here locally, and we've got a really interesting mix of humans here tonight. So I think the purpose of these conversations, from my perspective, is kind of an intimate chat. It's not to sit here and listen to the panelists, although we've got some great people here that we're going to have a conversation with, but I'd like it to be a conversation, so we will open that up. The joke about Ben before, he was very much in the conversation last time and limped out on crutches, but we can get to that a bit later. But that's good. I encourage heckling to a degree, Matt and Michael, yeah, looking forward to an interesting conversation. I think a lot of us are here because it's interesting times. We are in interesting times at the moment. There is a lot happening, especially in this space. Knowing a lot of you in the room, we've got a mixture of people working in creative services, clients working in marketing, working in brands, and this stuff is affecting really sort of everything all the way through, from ideation through to production and background again. So there's a lot to dive into. Before we do, I'm interested sort of from all of you out there, we did this last time when we set off, AI is a rapidly evolving technology, part of our lives. How many of you out there use an AI tool in the last week? Please put your hand up. Did anyone not? Oh, that's probably a better question. Okay, cool. So put it back up if you used it for work, not just personal life, playing around. All of us. It's interesting, it was, how long ago was the last event? 2 months, 3 months, 3 months? There was some people that hadn't. So it is moving very fast. Who here has had a moment where they thought, hang on, did AI just do my job for me? A little bit hesitant. And who's worried about that? Is the line getting blurry? People. Another one quickly. Who's worried? Put your hand up. Concerned. Nice. Excited. Who's excited? Okay, it's a mixture of. It's a kind of nervous excitement of what's happening. Nice. I like you in the front row there, Damon. That's good. So thank you so much for coming along tonight. I won't introduce you all again, but it is a pleasure to have you all here. All come from different backgrounds. Obviously, Steve here representing the law and can probably dive into the IP side of things. We've got Ben, who's worked across startups here and overseas. Kate was co-founder of Kojo, and Tony of Rising Sun. So we've got some, great heritage here from a creative production perspective. I'm assuming that some of your work now sits in some of these LLMs somewhere, that maybe someone across the world is actually spinning up somewhere. Steve, is that legal?
I have no idea.
This is going to be the buzzword tonight. I have no idea.
When in doubt.
But let's dive into it, because it is I suppose the main question tonight is, where does intellectual property sit? So everybody in this room has put their hand up and said that they are using AI tools mostly for work now too. In that process, if we are outputting creative work or any sort of potential intellectual property, a report. Let's see the news with Deloitte this week. There was a fairly interesting, expensive thing coming out of the consultancy world. How does IP actually work? Just break down for us what IP is broadly.
Yeah, IP, you say IP, but it's an umbrella term for a bundle of rights. So you've got confidential information, which is information that's confidential, so not publicly available. You've got copyright, which is a really big one for AI, and which protects the expression of an idea, right? And I get in fight with clients all the time, and they say, "Oh, this guy stole my idea." I don't care. It's irrelevant. It's the expression of the idea, right? It's something that you've written down, something that you've produced. You've got trademarks, which is signs that distinguish goods and services on the marketplace, right? You see the golden arches at McDonald's. They're going to tell you, you look at them, that if you go there, the burgers are of specific kind, quality, type, so not very good. And then you've got designs which protect look and feel of products, and patents which are more around the functional elements of product or some sort of system. So as it relates to AI, we're finding that it's more around the confidential information and copyright. So when I say copyright, we're talking images, we're talking words, we're talking reports, we're talking video. Anything that's artistic is usually bundled up in copyright.
And so what does that look like right now in terms of where the authorship exists between a human versus something that's done by a machine?
Yeah, it's very blurry, but in relation to copyright in Australia, in order for copyright to subsist in something, so to actually attract copyright protection, generally there needs to be a human element, right? A human needs to develop it. So if ChatGPT spits out something when you just ask it a question, more often than not, it's probably not going to attract copyright protection. But if you've spent all this time and effort developing a report, you put it in ChatGPT and say, hey, make this sound a little bit better, it improves it 10%, then you're still going to say the output probably has copyright protection. But this is just gut feel. There's no cases out there saying that. This is just applying existing principles that have been around for nearly 100 years now to AI, which is trying to put a square peg through a round hole sometimes.
And it's existing. It's interesting the precedent that's been set. So researching this, I didn't realise how far back some of this thinking goes in terms of what IP, what copyright can be applied to. Right. So there's the story of when photography came out. Right. That it was photography is created by a machine, therefore it doesn't necessarily have the human element required to provide it as something that can be copyrighted initially in the sort of the early days of it. So they were it was dubious as to whether that would actually be granted artistic copyright permissions. How has it been in both of your worlds, sort of in production, VFX? I imagine there's been stages of this over the last 30 years that you've seen different periods of technology coming in and changing your world, changing your workflows. Is this one different? Start with you, Tony.
Yeah, I'll pick that one up. We work at Rising Sun, which I departed in January. We worked in film visual effects, which is a really strict industry in terms of intellectual property and making sure that you can attribute that or assign that copyright and ownership of the material to the person that you're working for in exchange for being paid. But at the end of the day, everything in filmmaking is technology driven anyway. Filmmaking is inherently a technological process, from photochemical capture of images, the creation of effects through models. It is essentially the same industry that we've been working in since film began, since Mellies went to the moon and made that original special effects movie. Not a lot has changed in a process sense, but the tools have changed underneath. Sorry, it was always a joke about the fake moon landing, which of course we all know never happened. But no, it's technology change is inherent in everything that we do. It's in every corner of our lives. Our cars are different. The way that we write our scripts, we don't write them on typewriters, we write them on word processors. Everything is changing all the time. Is this just another technological change? I don't think so. I think this is one where the tools are so much more useful that it is a 10 times leap, at least, if not 100 times leap. And I am every day at the moment sitting down doing the work of a software engineer, asking Claude to make things for me. And they're really good. And they're things that are way beyond my skill that I would have had to have learned from a book 25 years ago before the internet. I would have had to have learned how to do that from a book. It would have taken me an eternity and been beyond me. So yes, it's a technological change, but it's such a dramatic one that I think it's just so shifting and obviously jarring for people also, because so many of our work, so many of the things that we create are up for grabs. The law being a principal one. The law is a very written down form of rule-based activity, which is ideal for automating through machine learning. But I guess
the amount of things I do at work, and I really shouldn't be doing. It's like all people in my team, and I'm saying, AI, and that's why we're so big on AI is just maximizing efficiency, and it's ridiculous some of the things that we still have to do manually that AI has just come in and just changed overnight.
Yeah. But I guess our world in film is very strict about copyright. It's very strict about chain of title. It's very strict about the ability to attribute it. I think where pretty much everybody in this room needs to look, and that's where Kate's interest is is in the area of TV commercial production, because it's incredibly tempting to pick up a tool that can generate an image and riff with it for a couple of hours and create stuff that would have taken you days, or a concept artist or somebody to come together with, and to create that and then put it on the screen. And you know, you need to consider that in where you're going. And I think Kate will have a view on it.
Yeah, I mean, you need to consider that what are you declaring to your client in terms of ownership of that piece of content that you've created, because it is a morphing of a whole bunch of different creative together to create another product. And really, you can't declare that to the client that they actually own the copyright of that potentially. If you've made it entirely out of generative AI. And if some of those tools you've used are known to the public that they can be traceable, and then it exposes a client legally to complications.
And therefore you.
And you. Because you probably signed, or certainly in the film world, we're signing a contract and making a declaration that everything we're creating has had a human at its hands, and that we are saying there is authenticity to that, and it hasn't been pulled from other copyright in the creation of it. So we're also liable in that sense.
Yeah, things like it's not going to infringe any third-party rights and that type of thing, warranties that you'd be giving out day in, day out, or what?
Yeah.
I'll come back to contracts, because I think that's interesting, because it is so murky right now. How can we kind of navigate that with an agreement, I suppose, from client to agency or creative, whatever it might be? What's your personal take, Kate, in line with Tony's, in terms of having seen, you know, a lot of different technology come through? We were speaking about social media the other day and sort of YouTube and the impact that had on film and video. Where does this sit for you into the scheme of what you've seen so far?
I mean, when I'm from a film and television point of view, I think you have to be very careful with chain of title, because you are saying that you have the right to exploit that. And usually we're bound by contracts from whoever's commissioning it. And if we haven't actually created it, or we've pulled it together from large language models in the writing, or we've used AI or borrowed from somebody else's content through using different generative AI, then we would be up for a lawsuit. In the advertising world, it's less strict on those contracts. So sometimes you just have a purchase order from a client, and whether or not the terms and conditions within that agreement talk about AI, it depends on the client and whether they've got any wording to say it. So it is really murky, and it depends on a case-by-case scenario. So if you're working with a large multinational corporation, they've probably got something in there that speaks to AI. But if you're working with, say a state-based client, maybe they don't have anything to do with AI and they're asking you to use generative AI, and both parties are inadvertently, potentially breaching copyright.
Because it is moving so fast, right? So, the body of work that sits behind something like a ChatGPT or a Sora now is, 100 years or 75 years worth of kind of computer science that's got us to this point. But in the last 3 years, it's just gone from, it's not going to be possible to be able to recreate a scene at that kind of fidelity and, with this amount of control. I mean, especially from the world you've come from, where, it takes a huge team of, very talented programmers and artists to be able to build these worlds and build these scenes, and same thing from a production perspective, right? You've got teams and teams of people, lighting and idea all coming together to create something, and now it's sort of a prompt and it appears. Is it shocking you how quickly it's happening? Okay, I'm interested in your take.
Yeah, it's at light speed, it feels. But I think it's still what quality you're getting out of that and for what, purpose it's for. So I still think that it isn't necessary, and whether it's getting that narrative right from a storytelling sense when we're talking about storytelling. So I think whilst we can generate it, is it kind of connecting in the same way to the audience with the original human intention behind it?
That sort of, I think you've all no doubt seen chimpanzees riding skateboards and scooters and things flying around. Those kinds of things were hard. Like it's now simple and entirely achievable to make the most incredible things. And I think what it does in a film sense is it devalues that imagery in the same way that visual effects in a lot of ways devalues the worth to the audience of a particular thing that's happening, because where you knew that some stunt person had put their life on the line to achieve something, you know, you felt it as an audience member and you were in the story and you were going along on that journey with them. We used to throw people around all over the place in visual effects and blow things up and do these incredible things, but the impact on the audience is reduced because it's just like, you know, somebody made that in a computer, so nobody actually cared. Take it another level and I can do it on my desktop computer or on my phone. Where's the value in that? And so the value in content in the future is in idea and expression and performance and the human elements, I think, that people will bring to the table as a part of making interesting content and interesting films and interesting TV commercials. It's not about throwing chimpanzees around on skateboards. That's just
Stephen Hawking on the vert ramp I saw yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, this is all kinds of other stuff. There's a whole new dimension to that stuff too, which is about truth, which we can have a chat about at some point, and what's truth. But I just feel like audiences will become numb. They're going to become bombed with this slop of AI. But what I think wins is idea, is expression of idea, is performance, and the human elements that go into making great film and great storytelling in ways that connect with people. And it doesn't need anything. It just needs people and a camera, that kind of thing.
So if we take that level, which I broadly agree with, and I think there's going to be a sort of a rising of, you know, it's easier to do things, right? And there's technology always does this. I spent some time as a photographer, and, you know, the difference between, I had this great, it was Dean Collins on lighting, and it was sort of in the 80s, you know, the commercial photographers shooting, I don't know, like a Rolex or a Ferrari, like the amount of effort that went into lighting that scene and shooting it on film and capturing it in one take versus, you know, what you could do in the digital age, craft, right? Real craft. But then, and I'm interested in your take on this, Ben, like that's a leveling of the playing field and a democratizing of some of this skills that used to be kept, you know, to a specific trade, craftsperson, that then those barriers are sort of gone. What does that leveling look like, and what does that mean for, you know, a young person wanting to start a new business? And, you know, because I look at what's happening with LLMs now, similar to you, like I taught myself web design 15, 20 years ago, and it was, you know, reading a book, and, you know, now it's just, you can do things so fast. It's exciting for someone wanting to get into something new, but what does that mean in terms of what's available and how you can maximize it, but not necessarily exploit it too?
I mean, there's never been a better time to start a company. That's my honest opinion. I think what you just articulated about the death of an artisan was also the birth of a new artisan. You are artisans of a particular era and of a particular set of tools, and the tools are changing. New artisans will emerge and are emerging. I think, I mean, I'm not a creative person. I am not, well, I consider myself a creative person. I'm not in the creative industry in the same way that the majority of people here are. So I have probably a different opinion. I'm incredibly bullish. I love it. I fundamentally believe the world will be a better place because of it. I believe that we are at the beginning of what it may have felt like when electricity was invented, and perhaps, you know, that would have been scary. And also people that produced candles would not have been happy. And everyone here knows that there is something beautiful about candlelight. But everyone here goes home and flicks on a light switch. I think there's something analogous there, where all of the same, like the principles you were talking about around what makes a great story, I don't think any of that disappears with AI. AI just becomes another way to express those particular those particular characteristics. And I'm probably of the opinion that we will potentially have more impactful, greater art forms than ever before, because there's more opportunity for the creative artist to iterate and to be exposed to, I suppose, more influences. That's almost, as you were speaking about the authenticity of the piece and the contract component around when you hand that over to a customer, can you truly say that, like, we produced this, and can we like credit, I can't think of the word you used, but credit where this came from? What was in my head was just like, for me, that is the regulatory, legislative, legal system just not keeping up. By design, that system is slow. Because it's like the way I imagine a creative produces something for a client is like they've been exposed to a certain number of things over their life and they are imbued in what they have just recreated. It's just that we think it was special that it came out of their mind, and that when you tap on a keyboard and it comes out of infrastructure that it's different. In my mind, that's not different. But that's a different perspective.
And I agree. That's the thing. Like when you sit in the middle of the space, looking at what it is, you know, where you look at that particular copyright argument about, I got myself in trouble with a couple of very, very large, one visual effects company and one movie studio, interjecting in this conversation in a way that I possibly shouldn't have. But what is different about walking into a gallery, because the tradition in cinematography is to be influenced by European masters. You say, I went into a gallery and I looked at these things, because all of our visual repertoires are the compilation of everything that we've seen and experienced in our lives. And so I don't believe that there is actually an original idea out there. There's really just the combination of a series of influences that we've experienced. That is directly analogous to what happens in training an AI, with the exception that I have taken exactly that image and I have put that exact image into an algorithm that has broken it down into components and reassembled it in a different way. And there hasn't been my eye, my brain, and my hand in the path of that. So yeah, no, I agree, and it's a fun place to be right now, because you're sitting in the middle of this dilemma where, if you're really thinking about it, you've got to be on both sides of the fence there, because on the other side of the fence, I'm an artisan and a craftsman, and I was a cinematographer, and there was a barrier to entry because you had to be able to get it right on the film, and then post-production came along and made it really easy. But the skills are the same. The skills were still listen to an idea, turn it into an implementation, realize it on the page. So, and then that transferred. Cinematography became electronic cinematography, became visual effects, becomes conversion into artificial intelligence or through other tools. So it is just another tool. I feel for the people whose lives are being affected by it, but Jenny often uses the example of model makers at the time that Jurassic Park came out. They went from stop motion animation, they were going to make the whole movie with stop motion animation, using the most incredible tech, and killed it overnight, because Steve Williams, an animator at ILM, went, there's a Tyrannosaurus tearing up a car, and everyone went, what the hell? And that was the end of model making and the end of stop mo.
Yeah, and dinosaurs will die, right?
Like dinosaurs died. Yeah.
And what an incredible film. Like, as in, like, a truly impactful film.
I cried when you see the Diplodocuses around the lake at the start.
It's still beautiful.
Oh my God.
I guess I would say the dinosaur doesn't exist anymore. So when we're just talking about humans,
Some of them are up here, Kate. Where are the dinosaurs?
I guess I agree. It's never been like AI is super exciting. You've never been able to do rapid learning, rapid prototyping, and get a result out of it, rapid iteration. But then thinking about the people who are in the commercial, or the people who are in the humans in the film, and the craft of acting, and, you know, voice acting, when you strip those things away and you move towards AI for that, what does what does that mean in terms of stripping that away and creating a generative version of a human?
I really like the conversation around the where you pull influence from, and a life is just a collected series of input, right? So I'm here, I'm experiencing this, I have this in my in my LLM now as Sam Davies, and then tomorrow something might be different because of what's happened now. I mean, pulling it back to sort of this, where the value sits in copyright at the moment, needing the human hand on it. Like we really are up against this idea of what it is to be human versus not. You talked about before, there's always been better tools, right? So we've gone from stop motion to digital effects, and that's a different tool. The difference I see now is that the technology is using tools, right? So it's sort of the tool exists, and you had sort of machine learning, which was relatively linear, and a chess machine can learn all the moves of chess ever, but now a chess machine can cheat and sort of learn how to get around the humans because we're not smart enough to understand what it's doing anymore. It is a different world. But then what does it mean to be human in that, right? Because you're actually up against something completely different, and the value set of what we actually care about maybe changes.
I think that's possibly one of the places for uniqueness. We were the Minister, Michael and Jenny and I and a bunch of other people, we were all at a conversation at the South Australian Film Corporation recently, and one of the participants chimed in, because I'm very tech forward on these kinds of things, and he chimed in about the nuance and the randomness that came from the human input to it. And it really affected me, that comment. It really affected my outlook on it, because it said there is a place for us in this, and it's going to be really, really challenging to AI your way around the outside of that. And we've seen it, AI makes great chimpanzees on skateboards. It makes the most incredible things that you can imagine, but that's not what gets people in. People want to be told stories. As human beings, we want to sit in an environment where we're told stories. And it was Greg Carnegie and the late Jeff Robertson said to me, 2 ways to sell things that they've been told: make them laugh, make them cry. End of story. Storytelling. Yeah. And that was their philosophy on advertising storytelling. And so it was, there's no shortage of place for us in it. It's just what we're using to express it is different, and therefore cheaper as well. But everything has become cheaper. There's multiple cameras in here that exceed the quality of anything that existed 20 years ago. So my phone can make a perfectly good quality cinema movie. We used to make movies for RSP and put them on the screen at Marion. They'd be great, little funny films that we would make. And so technology is accessible for everybody. Ideas are a unique space for humans to play, and the expression of ideas and the expression of performance is a unique space for humans, I think.
There's a I don't know if anyone here knows, there's a gentleman called Paul Graham, who is sort of a bit of a cult hero in kind of Silicon Valley startup land. He ran something with his wife called Y Combinator, which is a incubator, accelerator. Companies like Airbnb have spun out of it. The reason it's also highly relevant now is Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, who make ChatGPT. Sam Altman used to also run Y Combinator. Paul Graham was like a mentor to him. He has Paul Graham has a sort of a quote, but this is like sort of standard Silicon Valley law. And it's like, your idea actually isn't worth anything. That's when people come in and they pitch the VC for money. It's like, your idea doesn't mean shit. It's your ability to execute. That's actually what matters. And that's when I interact with founders often who don't come from my kind of world, first-time founders, or they've come from other industries. Whenever anyone says to me, I can't quite tell you my idea, or I want you to sign an NDA, that's the first thing. I was like, you're not going to survive in this world because you think your idea is special. It is not. It's your ability to execute. And I don't quite know how that maps to what we're talking about, but just like as you were saying that, that's what was coming to mind. It's like these tools, this technology might introduce a new idea to you, and that idea is some combination of other people's works, perhaps, But it's your ability to execute on that idea, to actually craft the story around it. I can see, I feel like down the path, and maybe not that far away, where the tool becomes, it moves from ideation to execution. I can see that because the chimpanzees riding scooters this is the worst this technology will ever be. Like, that's just true. And you think back to what it could do 6 months ago, and then 6 months before that, all technology in the beginning looks like a toy. And then people start to really, there's a small number of people who see what it really could be or can be, and then that inevitably starts to kind of proliferate. You think about, I don't know, I think about how my parents thought about video games when I was a kid. Like, it was a kid's toy.
Wasting the time.
Yeah, and now it's everything from, training, product and platform for emergency services and defense. I'm fairly certain it is the largest entertainment category by an order of magnitude. I think Grand Theft Auto, the new one, they think in the first 2 weeks it will generate more revenue than all of Hollywood films for like a 12-month period in like the first week or two. That's the forecast. It's no longer just a kid's toy. And so that's where we are right now with the video component, I suppose, or the visual component, I feel like, of these tools. Like, the chat-based is, for me, it's not solved, but it's also like, it's better than a person. Like, if you go deep enough with an LLM, I can have an interaction with a model that feels entirely human. I have the same emotional responses. It can be just as inquisitive and just as kind and just as curious and all of those things if you go deep enough and long enough. The visual component clearly is AI, like when you see it, but 6 months from now, 12 months from now.
For now.
Yeah, correct.
You just got to go back 12 months and look at what video learning models look like 12 months ago, because there was nothing.
Exactly.
12 to 24 months ago, there was nothing in video. And look at that as an extrapolate.
So pulling us back into, I suppose, commercially, like, as we watch it extrapolate, like, how are we going to, I suppose, protect what our industry is now, but then also future-proof what's coming? Because, I mean, personally, I'm similarly sort of, I don't feel like this is just another, a technology bubble. I think there's bubbles around it, and there's things that will change. But I think that the core of this is actually going to be quite, it is the revolution of electricity. It's going to change a lot of the world, and culture. I think too. It's going to impact culture in a massive way. But we're still here right now running businesses or starting new businesses, and needing to navigate that and put together commercial arrangements with clients and want to explore this stuff. And I think that's part of the tricky part, is that it is actually really exciting, right? Like, cool, let's dive in and actually use these tools, not even necessarily from a production output, but from research. I mean, in your business, I mean, there's so many efficiencies that can be found. How do we do that in a way that is not going to fuck us over from a legal perspective, or a commercial perspective? We end up like Deloitte having to pay back $300K to the Australian government for doing bad research.
I must have missed that one.
Oh yeah, Deloitte got busted for handing the federal government $450,000 research report that was completely spat out of GPT.
I have to pay back 200 grand of it? How much do I have to pay back? 200 grand?
Yeah, 250K to pay back.
Wow. Yeah, it's not enough.
One thing I would say on that, very embarrassing. There is a dent to their reputation. If you're Deloitte, the efficiency gains you have probably made over the last 12 months versus 440 grand refunded, like, insignificant, I would imagine. That you don't want that. It is embarrassing. They made a mistake, but I doubt it's going to fundamentally change the financial kind of profitability of
that is a very interesting segue, because I think so.
No doubt it does.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, but will they really? They will. Yeah, I think they probably will. I don't know. They might go down the path of the PwC and, like, you can't work with government for some period of time. That could happen.
I think I read they'd signed $29 million worth of contracts since that happened.
Yeah, it feels unlikely.
They're a big four company. They can get away with that.
So it's sort of like
But no one's ever going to pay them $450,000 again. That's the thing, is that the value of that output is now 100 grand because they know that some, it's always been associates sitting at desks smashing away on those things, paying partners beach houses.
That was going to be my question. Has it ever been worth 440 grand?
Well, of course it hasn't.
No.
It's the brand doubles the price. But I don't know. Should we be holding it back? What if we had held back the transition from still to moving photography? What if we had held back the transition from painting to photography? What if we had held back smashing things out on mechanical typewriters instead of word processors? We probably would have had better thought out pieces of work because we wouldn't have copy pasted things. It would have thought about it as it came onto the page. But should you hold it back? I don't know that you should. I think we actually probably need to embrace it as we've embraced every other technology change that's come along and work with it as a tool to enable things. I think it's going to change the way that the things that we do are seen in the market, and it's going to open up whole new worlds of stuff that people aren't yet seeing, but that you will.
I think the Deloitte example is a really important one because I think, I have a lot of clients at work that are worried about someone else stealing their rights, ripping off their IP rights. But a lot of the time, no one comes to me and says, how can I get my own house in order? And I think if everyone's got the right policies in place, if everyone's focusing on getting their own permissions right, if everyone's focusing on doing their own thing, everyone wants to adopt the tech. Great, this can save time. But does anyone actually ask, setting up the policies, the procedures, educating their employees, right? Because that's rooted in an employee issue, right? You've got someone, an associate level person who, there's not the right processes in place to ensure that there's misuse. And so I think if you get your house in order first, and everyone does that, then it's probably going to fight a lot of the battles.
And where do you get the information to do that outside of using ChatGPT to write your policy for you?
I'm no good lawyer.
But it's true. Everybody in the room needs to be thinking about what am I going to do to make sure I am not going to transgress somebody else's rights.
And so, I'm interested to do this maybe in one of the next chats, but we'll park the environmental concerns now, but then there's a ethical and moral dilemma here. So to your point around Deloitte, I assume that's the case. But so OpenAI at the moment coming out with this new model of Sora, they're basically saying, we're just going to do what we want to do and we'll pay the lawsuits for now. Because the law's going to take 5 years to catch up or whatever it might be. We're better off just pushing and then dealing with the moral quandary of, are we stealing, creative IP? Whatever, we'll pay that off.
I think the reason they're also doing that is because it's useful. Everyone in this room put their hand up and is using these tools because they're useful. We went through this most recently. The example I kind of like to think about is Uber. Uber came in, did not play by the rules in the slightest, guerrilla marketing, set up illegally, I have a mate whose dad was a taxi driver, migrant family, putting him out of work effectively. That's the narrative, but also true to a degree. And every single one of us here, I'm making an assumption, but I feel pretty confident in it, uses Uber and used it straight away and kept using it because it was so useful. Faster, safer, easier. And inevitably the regulatory landscape catches up, but Uber's still here and I use it 95% of the time. I think it's very easy to say OpenAI, big bad tech bro company doing it to enrich themselves. I don't personally believe that, obviously coming from the guy who works in tech, a bit of a cliche there, but I genuinely believe they think this is the right thing to do because it's the evidence is in 700 million people paying them every single month to use this thing. It's useful for the world and there is going to be a cost to that. There is going to be human cost. There's going to be moral dilemmas. But the usefulness, it's almost like it's past the pub test at world level.
To play devil's advocate on that, it's the same thing with Facebook, right? Zuck's had the exact same vision.
Totally agree.
Still sit there and say that, it's all for the greater good of connecting us.
Who here doesn't use any meta service? No WhatsApp, no Instagram, no Facebook, no Messenger, no Oculus. Who doesn't use a single one of those? It's very useful.
or addictive, and well positioned that we.
And we are
I don't agree with.
Yeah, they're testing us.
Totally. But everyone just voted by not putting up their hand. You found some level of use. I can't imagine running my life, my family, without Messenger or WhatsApp. I can't fathom how you would do that in a modern world. It can be done, obviously, but I don't want to do that. It's very useful to be able to.
You've got an answering machine, haven't you?
Do I have an answering machine?
Yeah, you remember answering machines?
I do remember one growing up.
Yeah. Or a beeper.
I'm going to open up for questions. I know there's a lot of very interesting minds in the audience, and I enjoy people shouting out. So I'm keen to sort of open up the conversation. I suppose we can go anywhere, really. We don't have to stick on IP. I mean, it's an interesting one because as you start, we were talking about it this morning in the agency, and we came to the conclusion like maybe IP just doesn't matter anymore. Like it's going to become such a sea of we can't. It's too hard to work out who did what when, that it is just going to become open access for everybody, and it's a different landscape. But
it's funny you say that. Actually, sorry to cut you off, but the Productivity Commission are actually proposing some exceptions to the Copyright Act at the moment, which basically say open slather for AI, training and data mining and text. But I think a lot of, and rightly so, a lot of creatives are up in arms about it because that basically just gives some of these tech companies a mandate to just do whatever they want. And the Productivity Commission's rationale for that is that they're forecasting over 200 billion to the Australian economy if they make that change. Sorry?
I'm joking, sir. I'm joking. Yeah. But only partly, so obviously there's a benefit there. I'm playing my hand a bit here. But I think that when we can calculate the dollar value, we can think that makes it morally right. But those two things don't correlate necessarily, right? They correlate very well for those that get the lion's share of that. But we all know that. This is a secret socialist sneaking in. So, and it's much harder than just saying that makes it wrong. So that's not very useful, is it? Sorry.
Well, what's your perspective on that? So back to the kind of the moral quandary of we're racing to improve it because everybody wants it, and it seems like the right thing to do. But is it the right thing to do? There's actual questions in there. Is there fail safes that need to be built in now?
I don't think it matters now. This is the problem. I think that us talking about what the right thing to do, we ought to still do that. But I think that we're at a point where it's going to happen anyway. And this is where I bet the conversations that you're talking about, where they're saying taking the handbrake off the copyright thing, it is the fact that it's all sort of, we're trying to hold back the ocean with a broom a little bit here, and it's going to probably flood through anyway. So if that's the new reality and everyone's super excited about it, there's still specialization that will always be important. For me, the big thing about this, I really appreciate the panel here, and I'm sorry I'm jumping in like this, because it's such a beautifully crafted set of really important opinions. But the big thing for me is we're talking about the creation of something, but for me, the other side of the human equation is the consumption of it, right? And I think that chimpanzees on skateboards are pretty interesting for about 15 seconds. But there's going to be a lot of things like love and like deep levels of meaning that is going to be relevant to me until I die, right? And I'm going to cry about the Diplodocus or whatever it is until I die. And so I think that that's where creatives are going to end up being somewhat of a kind of sorcerer class, right? Because we're going to need to use empathy more than ever to maybe even with research to find out what's really going to move people, and then however that's made from there. I think that we're not going to be able to hold back the flood, but we are going to be able to say where it's going to move people.
Yeah, I think a lot. I don't necessarily agree with the recommendation. I think it's actually a bit broad brush, but I think what the Productivity Commission are basically doing is what you're saying. I think they see it. It's already happening. They can't control it. So they may as well legislate for it, and then at least they can justify it, right? Because at the moment, all the laws are being undermined, at all levels, right? Just breaking it down very simply. In order to train AI, you have to reproduce content. And that alone is a breach of copyright unless someone's consenting to it. And they're not, right? So realistically, they're not. There's Anthropic, they're paying 1.5 billion because there was over 500,000 works which have been.
Well, that's just the payoff before the case has actually come.
Yeah, it was, and that was cheap, right? If they got slapped on the wrist, it would have been a lot worse. So that alone, and that's the training. We're not talking about the outputs, right? If you put any content in it, you get an answer. That answer's coming from somewhere, right? It's copying something, it's reproducing something. So it's both. There's that duality of the training is probably a breach, and what it's creating is probably a breach, and who even owns it if there is copyright protection. So I think organisations like the Productivity Commission are probably saying, well, how are we going to make this work, right? In reality, I think that's what they're doing.
I think also there's an argument that gets put out a lot, and we were discussing it earlier out there with drinks. There's an argument out there which is if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And I think that we as people and as members of our society need to not let ourselves fall for that argument, because if we don't do it, China's going to do it. If we don't do it, some other person's going to do it. If we don't weaponize AI, if we don't empower our robotic weapon systems with artificial intelligence to shoot without thinking, somebody else is going to do it. That argument is all over the place at the moment, and it's like a sort of, I don't know, there's probably a legal term for it, but it's where you sort of melt down an argument to this basic principle. And I really think that we as humans need to resist engaging in that argument too, because we need to think at a societal level about what do we want from our society and from what's around us. We need to ask the question, do we actually want multiple 100 gigawatt data centres in Australia consuming a huge amount of electricity that we've spent the last 20 years doing everything humanly possible to transition the energy consumption of this country to renewables and reduce our carbon footprint? And now, so that we can make chimpanzees on skateboards, we're spinning up multiple 100 gigawatt data centres. Is that what we want?
Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, we're all part of this societal experiment that Meta put out there. We're talking about that as well now. This is just another one of those in AI. So I guess we've got to learn from how do we feel about that? What are we learning from that? How has that shaped us as a society? And how are we going to take from that and apply that to how we work with AI? So I think it is a big question, and we've got it right in front of us. We're having the conversations just on social media and how that has changed us around the world and how we interact. Go.
I want the data centers. The reason being, in the United States, the largest power. So there's something called a PPA, which is when you front up cash generally to fund a renewable project and you agree to pay for the power over time. The largest PPA purchasers are all the tech companies. So there's in my mind, a very clear case for this is the way to fund the transition that we all want. That is underway. That is inevitable. But it costs money. There's just a reality to it. And the unit economics are really hard to work out on renewables because they don't always work. Like, what's the right mix? And they're very expensive. And ironically, in Australia, some of the greatest solar opportunity and wind opportunity is the centre of Australia. Really, really expensive to build something in the middle of Australia where there's no roads, very little airports, no people. You have to pay 3 times the wages to fly people in and out. So there's an opportunity there to go, well, the way we fund huge scale renewables is to get the big tech companies to pay for it by allowing them to have data centers here, because that's already happening. We also have a lot of space. It's not really used. So if you look at it from a global perspective, it could have less human impact in terms of disrupting communities. So I'm all for it. I think it's a good thing. You also just have the benefit of as humans, the more you do something, the more efficient you typically get at it. Not always, but and so we will get more efficient at building these things, at reducing the amount of power. Already there's a huge argument around the water consumption they use. There's a huge amount of modern data centers that don't require the same water consumption because water costs money. They're trying to reduce their costs. So you literally submerge the server rack in liquid to keep it cool, so you don't need to pay for more water. So there's for me, a very clear argument for why they're a good thing for the economy and for the environment.
Beautiful. Any more questions out there? Mike's got it. Yes.
Thank you. Comment first. The birth of electricity, that resonates. So I'm going to use that. Please don't claim IP. The question...
There's no IP anymore.
So is there any copyright?
IP's up for grabs.
For decades, I think legislation's lagged behind technology. Is that lag becoming unmanageable?
I would say so.
It's increasing.
Probably.
Yeah, I think where we're at the moment, it is, but I think that's a reflection of the speed at which the tech's going at, right? As you said 12 months ago, it's just unparalleled. Law is inherently slow. Lawyers are slow, but the legislation's even slower.
Not you, mate.
No, I'm quick. But
Affordable.
yeah, and affordable, cheap.
Value, it's called.
I've got business cards at the front.
Handsome, everything.
Yeah. Is there anything I don't do? No, anyway, so I think the point is that, inherently the law is slow, and then just the tech is so fast, and it's just, it's, yeah.
I could rip that Anthropic case that's in. So they've trained Claude on 500,000 books. That a few of them they say were pirated, right? So they say they bought the books and they've scanned them and they've used them in the training model. And they're saying this. The legislation is going to catch up for that. It's a what do they call a collective case where it's a
Class action.
Class action.
yeah, class action. So Aaron Brockovich.
Great film.
We almost watched it the other day. Yeah. 5 to 10 years for the law to catch up with that. And I just think 5 to 10 years from now, what's going to be happening then that's going to be lagging? It can't catch up.
I mean, the thing with the Anthropic case is that's US law, right? So very different to Australian law. In Australia, it's a little bit different in the sense that there's fair dealing. So they'll say you can breach copyright for X, Y, and Z if you do X, Y, and Z. If it's research, if it's giving advice, if it's parody or satire, whatever. In the US, though, it's fair use. So they have to spend time determining what's fair, right? They have to look to the purpose, the nature, the effect on the industry. There's all these different things that they have to get. So it does take time. I mean, courts in Australia are slow anyway as well. But I think, it is. I think it's a hybrid between defining categories that can quickly be determined. Because Australia's system's great in the sense that, that's parody or satire tick, right? US, though, is case by case. So I think if you find the law sitting somewhere in the middle, you might get a quicker outcome, but it's still not quick.
Well, we didn't touch on privacy much, but privacy is still, so obviously Europe was sort of ahead of the curve in terms of
and I mean the right to be forgotten, which I'm not sure if anyone knows about, but in the UK and the EU, they got a right where you basically just tell you have to delete everything, right? And so as an organisation, what if I've taken someone's personal information and I've thrown it into ChatGPT, right? And then someone wants to be forgotten. How do I?
we can't find it. So
Yeah, sorry. It's gone. It's out in the ether, and you can say, there's all these other, workarounds, but these are practical issues that are going to happen. But EU's ahead of the curve on privacy for sure.
One point on Anthropic, they're the they're the attempt at the ethical AI company as well. So I don't know if people know, they're ex-OpenAI. Most of the original founding team, they were not happy with the path that OpenAI was going on and that kind of very classic Silicon Valley move fast, break things mentality. One of the founding team is a journalist. He's not a computer scientist, but he became so enamored with AI. He's an English guy, Jack Day. Fascinating to hear him speak about it. So he discovered AI and machine learning whilst being a technology reporter in the United Kingdom. Became literally fascinated, moved to California to be immersive in it, saw the research papers coming out, saw what OpenAI was doing at the time as a research institute, went there and said, like, can I just join to be a part of this? And I think I have a unique perspective because I come from this journalistic background, joined the team, and then as OpenAI progressed and then went down this path that was quite controversial of going from a non-for-profit research institute into a for-profit company, a bunch of people left and formed Anthropic. So yeah, it's interesting that they're the ones that are currently in the spotlight for this particular case when they're trying, from their point of view, to do the right thing. The last thing to your point, sir, around the regulation, the thing I think is fascinating, there's a book that's just been released. Many people here will know Ezra Klein, New York Times. He's written a book called Abundance. It's pretty popular. There's a beautiful mirror book that I would recommend called Breakneck, written by Dan Wang, a Canadian guy, Chinese heritage, lived in China, and he just contrasts the American economy and the Chinese economy, particularly in technology. What he speaks about in the way that laws and regulations are designed, in America, it's something like 90% of either Congress or Supreme Court, I can't remember, but like their background of those representatives is a legal background. They're all lawyers. I imagine that's probably very similar of the Australian Parliament and maybe the South Australian Parliament. You poll them, what did you study at university? Most would be law. The Chinese Politburo, which is their like top tier, all engineers, 100% of them. And so not to say that the Chinese system is better, it's clearly different, but their approach to how these things are done is so fundamentally different. And I think that is such a critical piece, is that the people designing the system are approaching it as engineers who want to build something. We have a system that is designed by lawyers who are looking to regulate, restrict, interpret.
Bureaucrats.
Well, and not in a negative way,
Feeling
but it's just like
targeted.
you approach the problem differently. If I said to you, build a bridge, and you were a lawyer, I assumed you would start with like, okay, planning approval. If I said to you, you're an engineer, build a bridge, you'd probably start building a bridge. So I think that's an interesting how that plays out. And I think that's playing out in a regulatory landscape here and in the US and probably in the UK.
Yes, Hannah.
Yeah, just
good.
quickly. It's more of a comment than anything else, and it's around the fact that there isn't enough energy to run all the large language models in the world that we want to, run. So it would be, for me, around reframing the question, at least not in the short term anyway, as chips become more efficient, obviously, and as energy suppliers are able to ramp up, but it's going to take many, many years of lead time to do that. So it's about reframing the question around what can we do as a collective to compete in an environment where there is AI, and how do small language models and other things enable that competitive advantage? And as a collective, and an industry, and as a group of, clever South Australians, how do we go about doing that? Go on, Tony.
How do we compete? Creativity, idea, execution. Not everything is a generative AI problem. Not everything is a large language model problem. You mentioned the small language model. We at RSP basically used machine learning for problem solving. So somebody came with a problem, we applied we went to a group of people who had a bunch of disparate and varied domain knowledges, and we said, what would you do? And the machine learning scientists would step into that, and the visual effects artists would step into it, and the filmmakers would step into that, and you would synthesize an outcome from it. So what do we do as South Australians? We, I think, get together, we continue to network, we continue to talk, we educate ourselves, we build our processes and our practices so that we don't hang our asses out there to dry, so that when somebody brings out a court ruling that says that all learning material that was not authorised is a breach of copyright, that we're not exposed and our clients are not exposed. Could, of course, go the other way. But I think we just, embrace, do it. I'm not a believer in the idea of a national large language model, but I'm equally not a believer in the idea of giving away our sovereignty as a nation and decision making into the hands of an AI that is owned and run by people who have extremely strong opinions, because there's really only a handful of these things in the world, and their opinions are front and centre, and their self-interest is front and centre in this. And so we need to work to protect our own sovereignty in our decision making as this technology is adopted at government levels and across society. That doesn't answer anything, but I do think we need to be alert and aware, and we need to build ourselves up to do things ethically and not give in to the argument that if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and don't be that person that's going to do something unethical. Like when KWP would never do this, but when somebody shows up to you and says, I want you to make me this fantastic commercial of chimpanzees on a spreadsheet, which is just like the RAA commercial, except I want you to do it for this other people, don't say yes. But you can make that in AI. Well, you go and do that. You can go and make that in AI, but I'm not going to help you.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. We've got RA in the building tonight as well. So I mean, it's good. It's good. It's a good conversation. Like, we're right in the middle of it, right? Like, and not just with lots of clients. Like, how do we balance that? And I think to your point, it's going to be difficult to compete at the scale and the money that's being pumped into those big LLMs. But what innovation can riff off of that? And like, what can we do? I think there's heaps of opportunity that sits sort of underneath it or off the backbone of it as well, kind of off the mainframe. So it's exciting times, but it's crazy too. I think I'm being wrapped up. Am I being wrapped up, Hannah?
Get aligned.
2 more questions. I'll give you a question, Damon.
I think each of you have sort of touched on this just lightly, but I suppose with the chimpanzee example, what is the purpose of that piece of content, and then extrapolating that out to what's the purpose of humanity. Just a small question to wrap up.
I need another beer.
Yeah, no, it's just been floating around because there's creative people here, and I love to create. I love building, and that just gives me a sense of purpose. But what happens when this thing does get out of hand and it becomes super intelligent, and it creates for us? It creates things that we didn't even know we wanted to be created, and it knows us better than we know ourselves, which Meta's already starting to do because it's serving us better ads. What happens then?
You start seeing things that are targeted just at you. The ads that you will experience will be ads that are the synthesis of all of the information that Meta has collected on you, that other people that collect information on you, like Google, have collected on you, all of your likes, your wants, your desires, all of those things, all of your chats that you've had that are private chats that you've had with your friends, all of those things where this thing is listening to your conversation seemingly because it's showing you the thing that you just talked about. You're going to see an ad targeted to you that looks like stuff that you like, that is going to be uniquely tailored to drill into your mind and make you do the thing that they want.
But that's still kind of a human-centric view of it, because if it was, I mean, we don't know what an AGI kind of, an artificial general intelligence that is smarter than the history of humanity combined looks like. It probably doesn't really care about our preferences of T-shirt or whatever. Like, who knows what it would be trying to get us to do. I mean,
I sell you a T-shirt.
Yeah,
cool T-shirt.
I want, but then so take it that sort of into entertainment. Like, is there an interesting proposition there where I can say, hey, I want to see, Jurassic Park done in the style of David Lynch,
Yes.
blah blah blah, and
Yes.
it's served up instantly. That's kind of cool.
That's our 15-year conversation we've been having. That exact conversation about the ability to create unique content, and it's the joining up of film and games, and you see it. It's Fortnite. Fortnite is the beginning of this.
Just on the ad stuff, I see ads anyway. I think everyone does. Like, you've got ad blockers, you still see ads. I opt in to Google because it serves me better ads rather than just shit.
Yeah.
So, like, if the AI knows us better and it serves us better, will everyone opt in, which is what's already happening at the moment, Ben's point. But we sort of skipped over the big question, which is if it's creating all this stuff for us, then what will we be doing in this room? The actual creative part of what we do, which I think everyone gets energized around.
But I
Is co-creation.
I still think you're creating input to this. I still think there's something human which is unique.
Actively or
and really-
passively?
Sorry?
Actively or passively?
Yeah.
Are we consumers? Are we all just consumers?
Well, who's paying the bills? Like, what are you doing to pay? Where's your income coming from? Well, you're going to get a UBI. I doubt
Actually
it.
not.
My answer is these are, I don't know, $200 nudies. I buy them because they're nudies, because they have a brand, but that brand represents something. I could have got $25 jeans at Target, mass produced in a factory. Effectively, they do exactly the same thing. But like, it makes me feel good. There's a status component to that. I like that people look at the nudies, but it's actually, for me, it's like, oh, I like that I've spent more money and got something that is of a certain quality, but beyond the quality, it has a story behind it. I don't think that goes away. And I think that is true of everything. You can get the $20 bottle of wine and it is fine and drinks fine and tastes fine. And then you can get the X $100 bottle from Bordeaux in France. And it probably, it doesn't, for most people, it doesn't taste that different. But once you know that it's like, oh, this comes from, there's provenance and there's a story behind it and there's this human involvement as opposed to mass production, that feels different and you pay a premium for that. I don't think that goes away.
It's gonna be like an organic label at the supermarket. It'll be human made.
Yeah, totally. I completely could see that because there's already books that have authors' brands on them that I don't know, what's his name, Ken Follett or whatever. These huge books, he churns them out. I doubt he's writing them. He has teams of people. But you read them, they fill a purpose. But then when you read a piece from an emerging author, a particular person, you've heard them speak, I think it feels different.
But it feels human.
Yeah, but
It feels human.
but also a Ken Follett story or a Dan Brown still sometimes serves a purpose and feels good.
Cat videos.
It's a very interesting question, and there's a lot to talk about in there. But
No, it's okay.
yeah, Damon.
I don't think there's so much to unpack with all of this conversation. There's so much to unpack with all of this conversation. So all the comments have been fantastic. I love it. Answer your questions 42. Which I got a good giggle from that one. I was waiting for that one. I'm surprised no one else said it, actually. No, but I want to challenge what people have said, actually. I think there was a comment that came up first, Sam. You asked everyone here who is worried about their jobs. Yet we hear all the way through the value that is created. There's a human element. Why would anyone worry about their job when you're a human doing it? You're sitting there saying there's value in what you do. Why would you sit there and say AI is going to replace me? It's not coming for everyone's job. There are some jobs that will be able to be done, but it's not everyone. You will still do something. So I thought it was very interesting just looking at you two. You both stuck your hands up. Yet AI can't do legal. It can't do research. You see it with Deloitte. You see it with hallucinating case law. Yet you stick your hand up. It's not there yet. It won't be there for a long time.
I don't think it's there yet. I think I should put my half up because I think there are a lot of elements of my role that they're gonna go out the way. I think, and it's consistent with what I think everyone's saying. I think from a legal perspective, I'm very hot on AI, right? I'm kind of in the middle where I've got a lot of the young lawyers who are like all for it, and then the more senior guys that are kind of like wearing tinfoil hats. And so I'm in the middle banging my drum being like AI, we need to get on it. But I think the point of it is I don't think advisory, and that which goes to human, right? I think advisory is going to be, I might not do it, but I'm saying it should be done like this, or this is how it might be structured, or hey, there's all these different considerations that maybe AI hasn't thought about, or the fact that AI hasn't thought, who I'm dealing with here and the person I'm dealing with, because so much what I do doesn't really have to do with law. If I'm dealing with, a person on the other side and they're a specific type of person, I know there's one approach there. Or if I'm dealing with another person, there's another approach. So I'm not sure if AI can capture that, and that's why I think advisory might stand the test of time.
Bang on, I completely agree.
I have a question.
Yes.
In terms of AI continuing, AI continues to learn, right? But AI is growing. Is it not learning from itself? In which case,
Yes.
how do we know, in terms of our roles and them being safe? I'm an account service, so my role is completely with relationship management. I'm personally not concerned because I don't think AI can do that. But if AI is learning from itself, is it not just going to get dumber?
Yeah, there has been some. There's two things there. There's something around. It's called like synthetic data, like to train the models, and there are some people now saying that perhaps we've hit a plateau, or like you're getting diminishing returns. I think there's also just as many examples, both practical examples we all experience, but also scientific papers that demonstrate absolutely enormous leaps forward in very specific domains. So I don't think it gets dumber personally.
It's an interesting take. Like, dumb's maybe not the word, but like we don't know. Like it gets weirder. It gets like it goes further away from human. It gets into a zone that we can't understand. Like we actually cannot understand anymore.
Yeah.
Which is.
I think I just find it interesting from a fact-checking perspective, the amount of times that it's incorrect. And you just take it at face value and you go, well, it's on the internet, it has to be correct. But
Have you taken everything I've said tonight at face value as correct?
that's a good point. But I think it's an interesting one of you're looking at students coming through who are using AI to learn and to assist with, education, and they're taking it and they're not, they're not actually determining where this is from. They're then using that, and AI is then learning off, the more data that is out there. I just find it really fascinating to go, at what point are we going to stop questioning?
I remember literally my first year of university, you were not allowed to use Wikipedia. It was like if you put Wikipedia as a reference in an article, instant fail. I think it's very clear now that Wikipedia is the single greatest source of human knowledge ever written down. It's phenomenal. I think the same sort of principle will apply here, personally.
We are going to break and head back out there and have a few drinks and continue the conversations. There's more drinks and food out there. So I want to say a big thank you to our panel tonight, Steve, Tony, Kate, and Ben. Thank you so much, and all of you for coming along. Yeah, we can continue the chat out there. So thanks to Stepney for putting this on, and we'll see you next time.